Well, I just got the high sign. It's time. So, welcome and thank you for coming. It means the world to me that we can be here together and meditate together and talk about the Dharma together. In the past 2 talks that I've given, I gave a talk on devotion and what it is and what it isn't, and in some ways how we misunderstand it. And then we had Lama Tubden come in, and he tells us that devotion is the head of meditation as it's taught. So then I followed that up last month with renunciation, because that's something we get wrong a lot too. And Lama Tubden talked a lot about renunciation, but I wanted to elaborate more, as dangerous as that can be, about what it is we're renouncing, because here in the West, we tend to get a lot of that confused. We kind of figure if we get rid of all the stuff we hate about ourselves, then we're going to be okay, and that's not what it's about. So we had to talk about how through some introspection we can see how automatic and how reactive we are about what are called the 8 dharmas, hope for pleasure, fear of pain, hope for fame, fear of ill repute, and so on and so forth, all those. And that our renunciation, really, the renunciation of samsara is the renunciation of our attachment to those things as reality, because without any introspection or thought, we really do think that we're going to be happy and free and liberated if we get all the stuff we want and avoid all the stuff we don't want. That's not what the Buddha taught. What the Buddha taught was humans tend to have what they don't want and don't want, humans tend to not have what they want and have what they don't want. And that's because of a tangle of stuff in our minds. And that tangle is those 8 dharmas. So our attachment to that as our automatic idea of what reality is the thing to be renounced. So we talked a little bit about that. The last part of the middle section of that prayer, the Mahamudra Lineage Prayer that Lama Tubden talked about over the weekend 3 weeks ago or something like that, is awareness is the body of meditation, it is taught. Whatever arises is the fresh, the essence of realization. To this meditator who rests simply without altering it, grant your blessings so that my meditation is free of conception. Well, that is really actually one of the nicest things I've ever heard in any prayer anywhere. But then I started thinking, well, maybe we should understand what awareness is and what it isn't. And what's behind all that? Because we do a lot of things that actually have pretty high concept. We do a lot of, particularly in the mantra practices, Chenrezig, Tara, and so forth, Medicine Buddha. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's not just it's not just free of conception. So how does that all work? So I thought maybe I'd give try to give a talk about that. I call this my doo-wop Dharma Talk because the mantra for this talk, in case you want to keep this mantra in your heart as I speak, is Om Dooby Dooby. So Om Dooby Dooby. Because Dooby is what this is really about. I think it's important that we always, whether it's in meditation or in talks or whatever we do, that we do our best to engender the three excellences, which is in the beginning to engender a positive motivation, in the middle to practice properly, and at the end to dedicate the merit of spending our time that way for the benefit of all beings. And the way that we do the first of those three excellences here traditionally is to chant the refuge prayer together. And what I'd like to do is to do it 3 times. I want to do it twice in English, our native language, and then the 3rd time to chant it together in Tibetan. It's on the front of the card that you have. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Sanjay Chudang Soki Chok Nam La Jang Chu Pardu Dakni Kyab Suchi Daki Jin Sogi Pe Sunam Ki Nrula Pinshir Sanjay Rupar Sho. Thank you. So I made some notes here. I'm going to try something. There are going to be a few brief meditations or contemplations as we go through, because awareness, by its very nature, is something that you kind of ruin by talking about it. And it can only be directly experienced. So I figured, well, I got to talk about it because I have some questions, and you probably do too. So words are good. But also the experience is the direct experience of it is what really makes the difference, at least in my opinion. And so I'm going to try to do a few brief guided things as we move through. I hope that works for you. It's a little experimental, but I'm just warning on the front end that we're gonna give that a shot. The thing about awareness is it's open. It's open, it's unconditional. If you can label it, even calling it awareness isn't exactly what it is. Even if you come out and you say, I've got no awareness, I'm unawareness. Well, who knows, what is it that knows that you're unaware? Or, well, it's awareness. You're aware of your unawareness. That's awareness. It's always there with us. It's so subtle. So subtle. It's always open. We have it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's is awareness itself when we can just be in the pure presence of awareness. just completely open, we can actually experience a little bit of what our own fundamental enlightened mind, our Buddha nature is. And that's why in the prayer it says, awareness is the body of meditation. Renunciation gets us where we're going, and it's this tangled thing that keeps this awareness, this simple, underlying, pure openness that's under everything. It's the tangled mess of our psychology, our neurosis, that kind of covers it over and keeps it obscured, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It also can't be tainted by anything any more than clouds. While they can cover the sky, they can't taint the sky. The sky's still open and clear and so on and so forth. We put all kinds of pollution and horrible stuff in that sky, and still, when that drops out, when that precipitates out, it's still open and pure. Our own awareness is like that too. So when we're talking about awareness, we're talking about something that can only be experienced and can't be labeled very well. And it's the body of meditation simply because that is kind of like, meditation is kind of like being just relaxed, gazing at the sky at a sunrise, and seeing that sun come up, and it's beautiful and blissful. And the whole purpose of all these meditation practices we do is to kind of untangle our psychology, to clear away our obscurations so that we can rest, as the prayer says, in meditation free from conception, because that's where bliss and happiness is. And the goal of the Buddha was that. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. That's it. So, I have this meditation that I like to do, and I'd like to just start with that. It's very simple. So you know how we start with shamatha meditation, right? We sit up straight. And we bring our awareness right to the tip of our nose, and we let it ride on the breath. And we just stay there with the breath coming in and going out. Whatever comes up, whether it's a sensation or an emotion or a thought. We're riding in the sky, and these clouds come along, and we just let them go. Clouds do their thing, we do our thing. We're just watching the breath. Now I want you to continue to follow the breath as it comes inside of you. Let your awareness expand from the tip of your nose all the way inside, and feel the breath going in. Feel it entering your lungs. And your bloodstream. Feel it carried deep inside your body, right to the cellular level. Each molecule of breath, of sky, gives life to every single cell in your body. Not one missed. And now follow the breath out. That breath is taken in by trees and plants all around us. So follow it all the way in and all the way out. Your awareness open all the way to the microscopic level of cells and molecules inside your body and literally around the world. And rest in that big mind. Awareness is limitless, and it's vivid. We can see all of that. We know all that. We can get used to all of that. We can see that the universe is at home in us, right down to the cellular level, and that we're at home in the universe. We're connected. Okay, that's one contemplation. When you have a sense that you can give to yourself on the cushion of this extraordinary, obvious, ever-present interdependence, being connected to everything, good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant. There was no judgment in that experience, right? No labels. It's like your breath went out and it was feeding poison ivy and poison sumac and poison oak and beautiful trees and flowers and bugs that you like, spiders even, skunks. And what they were breathing, even all the beautiful things and all the things that you maybe label as you don't like them, they're filling you too. How can compassion not arise in a mind like that? So we have this idea that within awareness, the dawn of bodhicitta, or compassion, of both relative compassion, like I give you life and you give me life, that's relative, subjects and objects, and absolute, just resting in the openness within which that occurs. That's the simplicity of the meditation that we're trying to engender. All right. We try to figure it out. There are a lot of books, you know. I read a lot of books. I like them. But there's really nothing we can do in order to directly experience this awareness. There are only things that we can drop. There's only a way that we can be, ultimately. So the books are good because they inform with these ideas and give us instructions and give us ideas of ways that we can stretch our mind this way and that way in order to accommodate and open the doors for this kind of experience. But really, the body, the thing that keeps the whole life of meditation alive, is simply bare awareness. And so we train in that. I want you to think of one more thing now. Just think about this. Observe in yourself the change that comes over you the moment you stop seeing people as good and bad, as blessed and wicked, and begin to see them as awake or unaware and confused. Just think about what you saw on the news today, or yesterday, or the day before. What change comes over to you when you stop labeling this one or that one as bad, and you start just seeing them as really part of your universe that just hasn't woken up yet? What does that feel like in your heart? Well, we want to do anything we can do to help plant the seeds of kindness and compassion in those hearts that are suffering and causing suffering. And we want to dedicate our practice and whatever we do to the awakening of all beings without exception. That's where our refuge prayer is coming from. You know, that's what that said. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. That's it. We want everyone to wake up, and it depends on us waking up, in finding our own awareness. And this is kind of the Dharma path is the subtle, quiet path that we use to begin to bring ourselves to a direct understanding of those words. One of my favorite teachers, Garchen Rinpoche, says, and this is kind of how it must look when you get there, I guess. He says, to me, in this world, there are only two types of beings: my benefactors of love and my benefactors of patience. The majority is my benefactors of love. They are very kind and help me. Some try to cause harm and create obstacles. These are my benefactors of patience. The kindness of each benefactor is equal, and thus my love for them is equal. Maybe my benefactors of patience are even kinder to me as they allow me to practice the perfection of patience. I'm thus very grateful to all those who do not like me and make me tame my anger. At the same time, I feel great compassion for their sorrow. But as they allow me to practice patience and my anger and my jealousy gradually diminish, they are my teachers. Thus, in the end, when I attain enlightenment and all my anger and jealousy are no more, it's due to their kindness. For this reason, I love them greatly. When we begin to stabilize a view like this, we begin to acquire some qualities that we admire in nature, in trees, in the sun. It's one of the most powerful and subtle benefits of meditation to encounter something that normally would be difficult and realize this is a great teacher that has been sent for me. Until we've begun to untangle some of the neuroses that we have, some of our attachment to this illusion that if we all just get it right, we'll have everything we want, and so on and so forth. Until we do that, we can't see the grace that comes from everything as it comes up. We're going to have these preferences. This way of meditation that uses awareness as the body is about dealing with our authentic condition in a positive way. Finding liberation from whatever arises. Whether we're having experiences of imprisonment, imprisoned in our own thoughts or in the thoughts of others, or constriction and constraint, really feeling tight. Or whether we're having these blissful, relaxed, enjoyable experiences, awareness is there equally. So when we rest in awareness, there's an uncontrived and uncomplicated ease, and some people call that bliss. I was reading last week something Ken Holmes posted on Facebook, and it was actually the autobiographical comments of Akong Rinpoche, his guru, who was one of the young lamas that escaped Tibet in 1959 when the Chinese invaded. And that's what he talked about. When he talked about what he went through, it was horrific. And the thousands that left with him, of the thousands, literally, that left with him, he was very young at the time, I think 10 years old. He was one of the 13 that survived. And it was everything. It was Chinese shooting at him, and starvation, and disease, and being in the elements in the Himalayan mountains and all that. Difficult. And he said exactly what Garchen Rinpoche said there. At first, he was like any young person or any person. He just hated his own experience. But because he was able to go through that experience, survive that experience, and then bring that experience through the brilliant path of the Dharma to awareness, what was born in him was this profound compassion. And that compassion, you know it when you see it. We call it bodhicitta, and it's pure, and it's the light. So imagine, so here we got space. I saw this great meme the other day. It was just a picture of an open building, and in front on the door to enter the building said, Air and Space Museum. It was great. But in this space, just looking up there, it's empty, but it's full of light, and you can't separate the light from the space that allows us to see everything. Well, all our experiences are like that. They're the clarity that is within. Our experiences are the light itself that arise within our awareness. So when pain and pleasure and happiness and unhappiness come, if we're resting in uncontrived and uncomplicated awareness, it's easy to see the reactivity come up. I don't know if you've had this experience. You sit in meditation, you get a little cramp, and then you can either just look at the cramp and the discomfort in your body, and you look at it and you realize it changes, and eventually it relaxes and goes away all on its own. Or you can just take yourself out of the meditation and you can move around to try to get comfortable and do all that. Well, if you're in meditation and you're experiencing kind of this relaxation, this bliss, and something comes up, it's easy to see the reactivity that comes up with whatever comes up. And it's easy to just let go of that, to renounce the reactivity and return to simply looking. That's the exercise. It's as easy and as natural once you are in a meditative state as a lobster shedding its shell. Easy. It's natural. It's like the lobster says, oh, I'm growing. Oh, the shell's too tight. They shed the shell, they go hide under a rock, because they got to grow a new shell to be protected from whatever's around. But it's natural. And that's the idea that we have. But what about these practices then? Well, Mingyur Rinpoche says, the idea of meditation is something that we only do sitting on a cushion in a particular pose and doing particular prayers. And it begs the question, if we can recognize awareness anywhere at any time, why do we make such a big deal out of meditation with our cushions and mats and 7-point posture and all that? And he says the answer is we've developed a very strong identification with our monkey mind, a codependent, even addicted relationship to the 8 worldly dharmas as reality, when they are no such thing. They are more a prison or an asylum for our neurotic selves. Awareness is there, but it gets formed into unreal constructs instantly in each reaction to each appearance in awareness. So in order to shift our identity to the limitless openness of our natural awareness, we need aids and supports and methods to untangle the psychological webs woven by our mental poisons. We need these strategies, but we should not confuse them with the true meaning of meditation. Remember, we are not training in order to get something we don't have. We are training to untangle some stuff and strengthen some and gain insight into our mind, awareness, free of tangle of all our concepts, and get used to it and stabilize awareness as the mind of awakening. So His Holiness the 17th Karmapa said, how many obscurations and how many afflictions have been subdued or cleared away? This is the true test of meditation, not what a wonderful or special experience we might have. So, I want to do one more meditation here. This is something that came to me, and just imagine yourself you're actually snow up high in the mountains. This is kind of like a guided meditation. And the warm sun touches you and changes you into water. You don't really have a name, you're just water. And you're flowing down the mountain in little rivulets. You're just flowing along. And you get into like some creeks and some white water up there. And eventually you flow down into a river that's big enough that it has a name. And you carry boats, and people swim in you and use you for their manufacturing and all kinds of things. And you flow into a bayou where all kinds of other water is coming from all other places and meeting the ocean. And you flow into the ocean. And become part of the vastness. And the sun comes again and warms up the ocean. And you change again into vapor. You go from having the name of the ocean, the Eric Ocean, into nameless vapor and become clouds in the sky again. And as things change and you move through the sky, you begin to rain or snow or sleet or hail. And eventually begin again to melt into a little creek. This is another quality of awareness. They say that it's birthless and deathless. Oh, how does a human understand that? Well, we can imagine that we're water. And if you give yourself to that imagination, let the corners of your lips curl up a little bit and feel what that feels like in your body, which is mostly water. Just by your mouth smiling a little bit. Not big, just curled up a little. This is one of the first teachings of the Dharma, actually. When you see an image of the Buddha, one of the things that almost all the representations have is this just slight smile. So, once you surrender yourself to this sense of birthlessness and deathlessness, regardless of all the changes of state that you might go through, and a smile comes, feel that. That might give you a touch of the feeling of Buddha nature, that little smile. So Mingyur Rinpoche tells this story, and I'm going to just read it to you because I like it a lot. It's about this. And then I even have one more meditation at the end. So he says, this to me is a story about the difference between the ineffectiveness of just having a concept of awareness or openness or emptiness, or having a way, a path for our minds to go step by step in that direction and be able to experience it directly for ourselves, okay? So, yeah, I'd say one more thing about that. So when we start a practice with refuge and bodhicitta, well, there's a lot to that, but one of the things is that we're reminding our minds that our refuge is in something reliable, not these 8 worldly dharmas, but in our own awakening and the teachings that bring us to that awakening, and to the companions, both visible and invisible, both enlightened and unenlightened, that we have that walk with us on the path. And then when we engender bodhicitta, we're reminded to open that gate of compassion, to open, not close, all right? And then we do these practices where we can see ourselves as a bodhisattva. And as we get used to that, when we get used to doing the Chenrezi sadhana or the Tara sadhana, and we begin to realize that the way we see ourselves is just part of that tangled up thing that we're dealing with, but actually we're much more than that. That gives our mind a direct experience of our enlightened potential. That's the idea behind it. And then we integrate that as best as possible into our lives. So anyway, Mingyur Rinpoche says, there was this great siddha, and he was able to fly in the sky and walk through walls. And one day the siddha went to a town and met a king, and the king said to the yogi, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm a great yogi." "If that's the case, you must have a method to become immortal. Could you give me this method of freeing oneself from death?" And the yogi said, "Yes, fine." "How are you going to do it?" He says, "Bring me the vase." And he brought the big vase, and inside the vase was empty. And he said to the king, "Now you look at that vase very closely." And the yogi put his hand inside the vase and pulled his hand out, and he said, "Inside there is something, emptiness." "That's the method to avoid death," the king thought. "There is no meaning to that. Maybe he is trying to fool me." So he put the yogi in prison. He made the yogi stay in jail for 6 months. 6 months later, the many students of the yogi, quite clever themselves, thought, "Where's our teacher gone?" With their clairvoyance, they realized he was in jail. They all got a bit annoyed and jumped up in the sky and started flying over to the palace. "We're going to get our teacher." They were all in space above the king's palace, flying around. The king saw them. "Ooh, you must be great yogis." He lit lots of incense and said, "Please come down." They all flew down in front of the king. The king, with great devotion, said, "Please give me the method for avoiding death." And they agreed. They made a very big mandala. And on top of that, they made a sand mandala. And on top of this, they placed many parasols and victory banners and many types of various offerings. And they made it very beautiful. And the king saw this preparation and how nice it all was. And he thought, "Wow, I'm really going to get the method for avoiding death this time. Just look at that." The yogis all gave an empowerment in a very beautiful way, very nice. They gave the vase empowerment, the secret empowerment, the wisdom and knowledge empowerment. Then they said to him, "Now the fourth empowerment is the most important one. The true method for avoiding death is the fourth empowerment. So now I'm going to give it to you. Give me a vase." The king came and offered a big vase. And they said to the king, "Now watch. Watch that vase really well." One of the yogis put his hand inside the vase. And then he said, "Inside in my hand is something. It's emptiness. That's it." The king said, "Oh, that method is such an important method. I didn't realize before. This yogi 6 months ago, he gave me the same thing. I threw him in jail. I think that's a bit of a mistake. What can I do now?" And they say, "Go get him out of jail and bring him here." He brought the yogi who had been in prison for 6 months before the king, and the king asked the yogi, "What was the meaning of the contents of the vase you tried to tell me?" First he said, "The vase was a round shape, wasn't it? Within that was a sphere of space. I put my hand in and pulled it out. It was empty. The emptiness has no birth or death. Within the vase is emptiness, but the external appearance of the vase, that is clarity. So then, the union of the two, the external appearance of the vase, which is clarity, And the internal emptiness is the union of appearance and emptiness. And your nature of mind, awareness, is like that. So then the king realized the meaning. Then the king made many apologies and confessions to the yogi. And the yogi said to the king, "You don't need to make any confession to me, because I've had 6 months in jail, and because of my previous karma, I had to go to jail." Then the king turned around to all the students of the great yogi and said, "You've done very well. You made a very beautiful mandala, and you gave me an empowerment, but actually, the real empowerment came from the yogi from before." And that's the end of the story. So what I'm saying is, there are all kinds of fine words about awareness and Buddha nature and all that. And you may ask, why should I choose a practice, whatever practice, and be diligent with it? Well, it's because we're like the king. We can have the truth put right in front of our face, and we often do. We always do. It's always there. That was the first point. Awareness is always there, but we don't know how to recognize it. We need some steps, some things for our mind to go through. So let me give you one last meditation. This is my favorite one these days. So just leave your eyes open and gaze softly into whatever's right in front of you. Just let them be unfocused. And look behind your eyes. Look to see, for whom does this experience of awareness belong? Just exactly, for whom does this so-called awareness arise? For whom does it arise? For whom does it depart? Look at the awareness holder. Is there a you there? Can you find a you? Or is there just openness? Is awareness in you? Or are what you call you in awareness? And simply rest with that for a moment. Are you in awareness, or is awareness in you? Is there a you there, or just awareness? And there's one last part to this meditation. The word Chenrezi means loving eyes. Now I want you to simply engender loving eyes. Just have loving eyes. And rest in this open state with loving eyes. And as you gaze out with loving eyes, make that your dedication of your meditation. Just offer. Just offer whatever's there with the way you gaze at it. Just like Chenrezig. Okay, so that's it. I'm hoping that worked for you. I usually don't try to mix in all this stuff. I usually just talk too much. But there are a few moments left. If there are any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you. It's always the risk with meditating together. Words don't come easy once you're quiet. I guess that's part of the point. So, yeah. Oh, would you go to the microphone? Oh, please. Because there are people like on YouTube and stuff like that, and they'll be able to hear you that way.
When you find yourself getting caught up in the 8 worldly,
Yeah.
and then how do you, is there a mantra or a way to redirect to that center of, so that you are not, you catch yourself with the awareness of engaging in that, and then how do you course correct?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, she said, when you recognize that you've been caught up in the 8 worldly dharmas, how do you course correct? And boy, so this is a crazy answer. It depends. Once you recognize, so the first thing is you've recognized it. It's always best just to keep it simple. And if you look directly at it, and this would go for any emotion, any thought, anything that you get caught up in, once you realize you're caught, if you look right at it, it's like last night I bought a lottery ticket. Okay. Well, I could do a lot of good if I won. And then I started fantasizing about what I would do, all the good things I would do if I won. And then I got, totally wrapped up in this idea that, I could be this big benefactor being in the world and, all of that. Nobody would be hungry and so on and so forth. Well, that's not even, wanting a bad thing, but it sure would be a pleasure for me. And kind of a waste of time to be lost in that fantasy. Obviously, I think the odds of winning are somewhere around 293 billion to 1 or something like that. Anyway, so just looking directly at it, and for me, I find myself very amusing. I thought I was just kind of funny. So that smile kind of came to my lips and said, there you go again, right? So that's one thing. You just look at it and it falls apart, it dissolves. If you go a little further and say maybe it's a negative thing, maybe you're really angry or sad or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with anger or sadness. They're part of what come up in life, and we shouldn't try to block them. I mean, seriously, you'll just dry up and become a dried up old yogi, not juicy at all, not interesting at all to yourself or anybody else, of no benefit. So you don't want to just block that stuff, but when they come up, they've got a lot of energy. And if you're free, you'll be able to use that energy for something that you aspire to use it for, right? Whether it's anger or sadness or whatever it is. So you can take that energy, and based on what your aspirations are, you can direct it. But say it's not like that, and you're just like really sad and this woe is me and all that kind of thing, and you don't catch it until you're all the way down the road into self-pity or codependence if you're sad for somebody else, or, fill in the blank. Once you recognize it and you become aware of it, you can use meditation that we call Tonglen. Do you know Tonglen? Sending and taking, and you can just do a simple Tonglen where you say, oh, may this fear that I'm experiencing contain all the fear of all beings who experience fear right now. And may we all one day be free of it, and just rather than push it away and make it disappear so that you can become a dried up old yogi, instead take it in and allow your fear to contain all the fear of all beings, and breathe out the aspiration or the wish for all beings to be free of fear and the causes of fear. So it's always workable, and this is why it's good to have some practices that we can work with, because they're tools for us to take those tangles and untangle them and use the energy in a way that takes us another step towards entering this space of open awareness that's full of light. Right? Does that make sense? So mostly I find myself to be amusing. Oh, by the way, I got an email because I did this online, and it said that I won. I did. $4. So, it wasn't 1.4 billion or whatever it was $4. So, maybe if the urge hits me again, I'll invest the $4 or something like that. Yeah. And so I did it all over again. It's like, I see this email said, you won. And I'm like, oh boy. Yeah. So, the most important thing, I think, is to actually be playful with it. I use the image myself of my own thoughts as being like children playing in a sandbox. They're rather amusing. And as long as they're not hurting each other or anybody else, I let them go. So, let's finish up by doing the dedication of merit. And we'll just say this in English. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is. Samantabhadra, who knows in the same way. And all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path. I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thank you, everybody.